Hello all and welcome to the Hippos R Us gaming YouTube channel. So I want to share my thoughts on the Diablo 4 open beta early access that I had been able to play around with this past weekend with my fiance. For those of you who don't know, I'm an avid Diablo player. I played quite a lot when I was in middle school. That game was life-changing. Diablo 2 it holds a very special place in my heart. Some of my best memories were logging into Diablo 2 just to tear up some demons with some of my friends. And then Diablo 3 came out. I enjoyed playing it. Wasn't quite my favorite, but it was still a pretty solid game. And, it still had that hack and slash Diablo feel. So with the fourth game coming out, I'm very excited. And I'm wondering, how does it stack up? And we're about to find out in this video. All right, let's get into it. Before we get started, I want to talk about the different categories and how I will be rating this game. So to start off, I'm going to talk about character creation and what that experience was like. Then I'm going to talk about how the combat went, the gameplay and the settings, the cinematics, my experiences with couch co-op, UI inventory, class feel, and then wrap it up with a conclusion. When I first booted up Diablo 4, I didn't expect to be able to change my character. I didn't expect anything to really set them apart from other characters in the game. If you played Diablo 3, Diablo 2, you might be so shocked as well because in those games we didn't have character creation. What shocked me even more is my character still showed up in certain cutscenes, and I loved that. While the choices were very limited, I wasn't even expecting to be able to have any agency in how my character looked outside of armor appearances. This was an exciting surprise for me that, while limited, it felt like they really thought it out. Both me and my fiance loved the characters we made. And overall, I think I would give this area of the game about a 6 out of 10. Because while I really liked it, the beta options should be just the start of what could be a very well crafted character design tool. And I think they're onto something, but I don't know if I would be as confident as to say that they're there yet. Next up, we have the combat. I had difficulties understanding which enemies to prioritize other than moments when there was a bigger creature to attack. I missed the clearly indicated blue, yellow, purple, and white nameplates that clearly indicated the rarity of enemies. This may have been due to the couch co-op, but my fiance and myself shared the same confusion and frustration when fighting larger mobs. The combat, however, did feel clean and well made. When I hit a button, it did exactly what I expected it to do. It felt as though every action was intentional rather than a button spam fest. I much preferred the slowed down experience and necessary reaction interactions while in combat. There were times where I needed to dodge and actually implemented mechanics, believe it or not. I liked that. It felt as though combat had more meaning. Overall, I say I would give combat about a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have gameplay and setting. MMO mechanics integrated into an ARPG turned out to surprise me in a positive way. I enjoyed seeing people passing by. The world felt alive, but didn't feel overly crowded like it does in some MMOs. While we didn't get a chance to fight a Shava, we thoroughly enjoyed the different quests. Loot was more scarce throughout the game. Initially, I thought I would dislike this, but it wasn't too scarce. It wasn't to the point where I was feeling like I was starved of resources and not getting what I needed. There were times where it was difficult, but we still were able to get items that, once equipped, you really felt the power spikes of. It felt well balanced. The setting is absolutely incredible on top of it. I felt as though each dungeon and area we explored were beautifully designed, and a lot of thought was put into how each area and asset looked. The exploratory tools such as climbing and jumping across ridges at times shined, and at other times just felt a little bit unfinished. It felt a little bit flat and clunky. I think when advertised, it looked more epic than it does on screen, but it isn't bad. Just not quite what it could be yet. I would say I would give gameplay and setting a solid 7 out of 10. Next up, we have the cinematics. While we skipped most of the cinematics due to me wanting to experience as much game time as possible within a limited amount of time, when the game fully launches, I plan to take it slower as these cinematics are outstanding and well made. An easy 8 out of 10. We watched the first opening scene, and I knew immediately that I wanted to sit down and enjoy each cutscene when I have my first full playthrough. Next, we have couch co-op. In terms of the beta experience, this was lackluster due to the complexity and challenge of setting it up. We had a ton of bugs and wasted a lot of time scouring the internet to figure out how to connect player 2. Once connected, bugs continued to make our lives a living hell, and not in the traditional Diablo way. At one point, I had entered a cutscene which booted me from the game and made my fiance the sole player within the game, and this is under my PSN. So it prevented me from joining and continuing to play with my fiance, while also having her signed in on her account but through my PSN, so that didn't feel quite right. Once day 2 came about, many of these issues were solved, and we were able to experience more of the game without as many headaches. It felt great once the bugs were figured out, and we both had a blast fighting alongside each other. Lastly, the requirement to reach the first town felt clunky as it required both of us to log in separately and watch the other play the beginning quest just to get to a point where we both could play together. I much more preferred that experience in Diablo 3 where player 2 can just make a fresh character and start when you start. Since many issues were resolved, I would give the co-op experience about a 6 out of 10. It was a lot of fun, but incredibly frustrating to set up. Next, we have the UI and the inventory. Oh boy. The UI for the action bars and resource management felt like a slightly more polished version of the old action bars resource pools. With that being said, the menu to navigate the map, character tree, and inventory felt very clunky and not very intuitive. The inventory had a classic RPG feel, and I enjoyed the look of it. However, I prefer Diablo 2's inventory, where each item had a different shape and size, and it made sense, kind of like Tetris management. Personal preference, I know, but when it comes to the menus and navigating them, it's confusing, it's clunky, and a lot of it just doesn't seem to make sense at first. And oftentimes, we felt ourselves hitting the wrong button to get to where we wanted to be because it just didn't feel that intuitive. So overall, I would probably give the UI and inventory and that whole section about a 3 out of 10 because it doesn't feel anywhere near what it could be. Lastly, we have class feel. I had the pleasure of playing the sorceress, and my fiance had the pleasure of playing the beefy barbarian. She said that she didn't enjoy it early into the levels and struggled a bit with her class, but eventually had a good time when she had a feel for it and we started getting gear and levels. The sorceress had a pretty clean and fun design. I'm not usually a mage player, but I did enjoy the sorceress despite me planning to avoid the class overall. One of the biggest frustrations was resource management, believe it or not. But with how combat was designed, it didn't bother me as much because I had known that I needed to slow down and think about which spell to sling at an enemy. This felt good. Also, bringing back skill trees made my heart sing. I give class feel about an 8 out of 10. However, I think it's just limited to sorceress here. I'm a little bit hesitant because I haven't played any of the other classes, but for what I did get to play, a solid 8 out of 10 feels right. I loved how each class has its own mechanics and flavor. That's a huge kudos to Blizzard there. That's incredible, and I love what they did. In conclusion, tallying up the average scores, the beta experience comes out to about a 6.5 out of 10. While I didn't have the issues that others may have had with the long queue times as I joined a little bit later in the game, I'd be lying if I didn't say that the first day was kind of spoiled due to the issues with the couch co-op experience, which is what me and my fiance care most about. The game is fun, but it definitely has its bugs and areas of improvement. However, I absolutely love the direction that they're heading with it. The current state of gaming is littered with buggy releases and overhyped releases, and I myself am a victim to the whole Anthem thing and Cyberpunk situations. I pre-ordered both, and I know what that disappointment was like. While Cyberpunk turned it around, I would argue that Diablo 4 feels really well made for a beta experience. There's plenty of room to grow, but it isn't in as bad of a state as many games are in upon their release. Diablo 4 isn't Diablo 2. It isn't Diablo 3. Diablo 4 feels unique to itself, while also singing true to the Diablo franchise. Well done, Blizzard, but continue to polish up on Diablo 4, and I believe it could be a fantastic release. Again, this is Hippos R Us Gaming. I hope you enjoyed this review, and until next time, take care.